What's up everybody, I'm Derek, this is Rocking eForge, and today I'm going to be showing you how I forged and fabricated this ball end punch. Now this is going to be the first part in a slew of videos or a playlist devoted to tools revolving around the sculpting or shaping of steel in order to get things like skulls or figures or faces or ram's heads, things like that. If you are following along, this video will contribute directly to your ability to forge a skull come spooky season or Halloween. I am going to be using this playlist to kind of derive the different tools that are helpful for each specific project in order to improve not only my skills at figure carving, so to speak, not really the right term for it, but we'll go ahead and move on, but also give you the ability to forge your own tools by giving a relatively deep dive into forging each one. So let's get rocking. All right, so I'm starting with 6.5 inches of 4140 round stock, and this is 3/4 inch. And I'm just starting on the struck end or the hammer end of the punch, like I do in all of my punch videos. I'm just gonna forge this into a nice blunt taper here. And I'm going to not worry about getting too much done in each heat. So my goal for this punch is I'm just going to take this as a square taper pretty much all the way up the length of the punch and knock down the edges, and I think that'll look really nice for a simple ball end punch here. And I'm just going to work this struck end back just a little bit. I don't want this to get too skinny because I need to be able to strike it with a hammer without getting too much glance off or whatever. If it was particularly sharp or real skinny, I'd have a higher propensity to miss, let's just say that much. All right, so now I'm going to just flip this around and stick the business end in the fire and start tapering this down to a nice square taper. So the goal here is to get this as in line as possible, and I've got it oriented as well as I can in my tongs so I can get this square to line up from this end to that end. Let's see how I did here. It looks like this end is off, so what I'm going to do to correct this, I need to bring this edge down toward the anvil face a little bit because it's a little out of square. And the way I'm going to fix that is I'm going to put it back in the fire, obviously, and get it hot again. But I'm going to bring this edge, so this face, the opposite face, lay it flat on the anvil, and then I'm going to strike at an angle so that my hammer blows land primarily on this face and bring that kind of back into square. All right, so I got to make sure I've got the right edge here, and then I've got that the far face flat on the anvil, and I'm going to hit this just at an angle to bring that back in line with this edge up back with that edge. I think that pretty well does it, so we're going to flip to the other side and see if that needs any adjustment, and it sure does. So again, keeping that far face on the flat on the edge or on the anvil, and just bringing everything back into alignment there. All right, now my goal here is just to forge this down to about the dimension that I want it. Wow, I am. There we go. And I'm trying to angle my piece here so that I get an angle on all four sides and I don't have to forge on every bevel, but that works as well. I'm going for a 3/8 inch ball end punch here, and I'm looking to be about 3/8 inch square, which is going to be a little skinny, which is not a problem because I'm going to end up grinding this back up toward the handle portion anyway. So now that I've got that to 3/8 inch square, I'm just going to start blending that taper all the way up to through the body of the punch. Now you can tell I got a little out of control there, and I ended up, I'll make a demonstration here, ended up starting to lift my hand and I was striking weird and I ended up with a bit of a curve. And the way to correct that is to simply just flip it back over so that that empty space of that curve is over the anvil. Strike down on the opposite side of it, and that'll straighten things back out. All right, I'm spinning this around and swapping to a different pair of tongs so I can hold this better. And I'm just gonna blend this taper into that taper that I have for the struck end, and we'll be ready to move on to the next steps. All right, so now while I've still got just a little bit of heat, I'm gonna be planishing this off. I'm gonna blend that surface all together, evening out those bumps and ridges. And you'll notice I've got not quite a sharp edge here, and that is a-okay, because my goal here, the next heat I'm going to do, I'm going to come in and just hammer down on this edge and bring that to a chamfered edge, and then I'm going to let this cool down and I'm going to grind it. This will be the first punch that I've made with a ground steel finish, so I'm looking forward to how this thing turns out. There's nothing quite like hammering down on the sharp edge of something to show you where all of your bumps and lumps and everything are, and how inconsistent your hammer blows are. But that's all right, it'll all even out. Especially as I grind down the final to the final surface, it'll all even out. Whew, it's putting out a lot of heat. Before it cools off too much, I'm just gonna go ahead and grab this, mostly because it's easier with this pair of tongs on that end, and give the surface a nice brushing. And if you are following along and you don't want to, you know, put a shiny gloss, so to speak, on your punch, I do have a tendency to leave my punches all scaled up, and I think that looks pretty awesome, and just grind the applicable spots down to the shape that I need them. And I love this look, but I'm going for just a different look here. One, it'll help me differentiate between the two ball end punches that I'll have by the end of this project, and the other reason is just simply to, you know, continue trying to get better and improve my craft here. So I definitely want this to be, you know, kind of a little more upscale version of the ball end punch that I've got here. But now I'm going to just go ahead and let this cool down nice and slow, and I will come back probably tomorrow morning and grind this to kind of final dimensions, and we'll get it back in the fire, touch marked, heat treated, and we'll be finished. Alrighty, so it is the next day, and this thing is all cooled down, obviously. It's looking pretty basic, so the next step is to take it to the grinder and make it look a bit less basic. So let's rock. So let's get rocking. So let's get back rocking. Let's keep on rocking. Alrighty, now that we've got that nice and at least somewhat started on the polishing process, figured it was time to come in with the touch mark here. Make sure I'm going the right direction. But I've let this cool down quite a bit, but that's all right. Now that I've got my touch mark in there, I'm going to stick this thing in the fire. I've got a nice preheated bucket of water behind the anvil here, and we're going to heat treat this by getting at least about 5 to 6 inches of this, a dull orange color. I'm going to quench the first ½ inch of this punch, and then I'm going to let that heat that's still stored in the body of the punch bleed to the tip and temper that in this process. I'm going to do that as many times as I can. And the reason I do this, I had a question on one of my previous punch videos asking why I heat treat and temper this way. The reason I do this really is a couple-fold. One, it's just the way that I learned how to do it from Mark Asbury's book, Skills of a Blacksmith Volume 1. And 2, it's just quicker, simply, than quenching the whole thing and then doing, 1, 2, 3 tempering cycles in the oven. This just kind of gets everything done and out of the way all at the same time, and I don't have to worry about doing that tempering process. So we're going to go back in the fire, and we're going to get this thing heat treated and finished up. All right, so I've got the door to the garage shut so I can try to see. Wow, that is not cooling off very fast. There we go. So I can try to see these tempering colors run, and I'm going to use this scraping stone to just wait. And I'm waiting until the tip gets about a dull straw color. And I think I quenched too much of this tip here this time around because it's not running very fast. Scrape those colors off and let them run again. And this is the reason I didn't go beyond 240 grit on the punch before I heat treated, because I'm going to scrape the crap out of it anyway, and I'm going to go back to 240 after this. And I'm just going to try to get one more out of this because there's still a lot of heat stored up in the mass of this punch here. And I'm hoping it works out all right. So the key to doing this here is to keep the steel of the punch itself off the anvil. The tongs are acting as a heat sink to an extent, but if you're down here touching the anvil's sucking out all that extra heat. And you don't want that when you're doing this process, because you want all that heat to creep back toward the tip in order to temper the tip there. And I'm just watching the oxidation colors. The steel oxidizes certain colors at certain temperatures. And I know that the dull straw color, the color of straw or a dull yellow, is the temperature that I want to temper this at, and that brings it back. So the quenching process hardens the steel. The tempering process, or letting that steel heat back up after it's been quenched, is bringing that hardness back so that it's not so hard that it's brittle and it shatters. I'm going to quench that one more time. It's amazing seeing the transition from just kind of that dull, shiny color of raw metal to the straw yellow. It's interesting to watch it happen in real time, because it's almost really subtle, and then suddenly the whole thing is yellow. But it looks like that is going to be the end of my tempering runs here. Might get lucky and it might just equalize that temperature. So I'm going to let the anvil suck the rest of the heat out of the body of the punch, leave this off, and see if I get one more temper out of it. But I'm going to let this sit, cool down, and then I'll go back to the grinder and polish this thing up, and we'll be finished. All right, so it is now cooled down. And I'm going to use this 240 grit belt to clean off all just a little bit of forge scale that developed there on that last couple of heats. And then I'm going to just bring this to, I'm going to say 400 grit. I don't think it needs to go any higher than that. Big thing that I'm going to be doing though is I'm going to be dipping in the water like I was for the first portion, but it's much more important now not to overheat the tip here. Now I'd have to get it hotter than that straw yellow color that I was going for that temper anyway, which I am not going to be doing because it's like 440 degrees, 450 degrees, something like that. I'm not going to touch that. But that is the caution here. So just to avoid any risk of over tempering my punch, I'm going to be just dousing in a nice bucket of water. So let's keep going. Alrighty, and that is going to do it for today's video. I really love the way this thing turned out. It's nice and shiny, real pretty, real pretty. And now I've got kind of two different styles of ball end punch that I think both look really nice. And the ends of these are significantly different size, so that'll give me a nice versatility in punching bottle openers and things like that. Now, this punch is going to be featured in a future video where, as we approach spooky season, or not Thanksgiving, or Halloween, I am going to be making a video on how to forge a skull. And this tool, as I kind of mentioned previous, is going to be the first tool to forge in order to make that skull. So I do hope you are following along. This ball and punch will help punch out the eye sockets of the skull itself. So it is in fact vital to have this style of punch in your toolbox for that future project. You do not need to go to the trouble of, grinding everything down real nice and shiny and everything. You just simply need to have a ball end and a struck end that kind of tapers a little bit, and I like the taper there to avoid a lot of mushrooming. You still get some right at the tip, but it kind of minimizes it. And you can absolutely do this without a grinder. You simply just need a simple file and file this down to a rounded tip before you heat treat. Make sure you do that before you heat treat, because filing this down after you've hardened it is going to be significantly tougher. I usually finish most of my punches off with a nice layer of beeswax, but with this nice shiny surface that I've got going on, I didn't want to darken that or otherwise, change the way it looks. So I'm simply gonna just wipe this down with an oily rag, and that should protect it from rust, which I'll continue to do each time I use it, or, every week or so. Now, following along or not, that is going to do it for today's video. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like, leave a comment, hit subscribe, ring that notification bell. If you want to support me in the channel further, please consider becoming an honorary striker on my Patreon. That link is in the description below the video, or please consider becoming a member on my YouTube channel. And as always, keep on rocking.